I didn't want to wake up and do it anymore. I was done. And the feelings got darker and darker and darker. And it wasn't until a very dear friend of mine came to me and said, there's something wrong. There's something different. And all of that energy that went into lying, hiding, and faking every day, I now had new energy, renewed energy to actually find a solution. Okay, so very, very few of us can clearly articulate why we do what we do. I don't mean to make money. I mean, what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why did you get out of bed this morning? I have a vision of a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning inspired. But I don't think you can be high performance by yourself. I don't think it exists. They're either not as high performing as they think they are, or they are high performing, but at tremendous cost. It's really hard when your friends say to you there's something wrong and you go, no, everything's fine. And then they let it go. The friends who truly, truly, truly love you are the ones who will lean into that tension and go, I got you. I love you. You're safe. I think high performance is more of a feeling than an accomplishment, right? I think high performance is being in flow. When I feel like I'm performing well, I'm actually having fun. No matter how difficult the work is, no matter how stressed I am, even if I work late, at the end of whatever I'm doing that day, I'll walk and go, that was fun. And so for me, high performance is probably this intersection where you like the thing that you're enjoying and the thing that, and you're being productive sort of collide. I think it's more of a feeling than it is a calculation. Well, as I said, fun is a big part of it for me. And the way that I make sure that it is fun is that there's a context for everything. So I'm very, very purpose-driven, cause-driven. I have a vision of a world that does not yet exist, a world in which the vast majority of people wake up every single morning inspired, feel safe wherever they are, and end the day fulfilled by the work that they do. And as long as whatever I'm doing is moving towards that, and I don't even care what it is, whatever I'm doing is working towards that, and I can either feel or measure that I'm working towards that, then I will much more easily find myself in that state. So for example, if I know something doesn't, so let me give you an example. Like if some company calls me and says, we'll offer you a ton of money to come and speak to our top 30 salespeople at a company that I don't really respect, that their culture is something that I wouldn't write about, but they just offer me a ton of money, to go do it, I will turn it down, because the feeling of being there will feel like work. Whereas when I get offered to go somewhere where it pays a lot less, but what they tell me that their company does or the way that they lead their people, I find interesting, I find inspiring. I actually want to learn from them. And then showing up with them and the conversations I have with them and the feeling that I get that I'm contributing to whatever it is they're doing, that brings me tremendous joy and flow. So it's really about having a filter and using it. I think a lot of people talk about cause and purpose, but they use it as a punchline. It's copy on a website. And if you're too metrics driven, it's much harder to get that feeling, because metrics don't produce that feeling ever. My team knows I call it belly of the beast, which is I will say yes to things where I know that they don't. I'll go into a big bank that I think has done damage, and I will show up as a preacher for sure, but then I have to have scale, right? So the example I gave was 30 of our top salespeople. I'm not moving any needles that day, right? But if you say it's the top 30 CEOs from the biggest, whatever, venture capitalist firms and banks, whatever. Oh yeah, I'm going to do that. But I'm coming with a different agenda. I'm coming there to preach. So I've worked with many dysfunctional, broken companies. The difference is there's at least a few people, a few executives who know that change has to happen. And they welcome my message when I go in there. In other words, there's hope. I'm not going to go preach to a brick wall. There's literally no point. There has to be at least somebody in there who has interest, which is a pretty easy thing to gauge. Well, I don't think they're going to invite me. Those who know if they're inviting me, somebody has at least told them that this is going to happen. And it's happened a few times where they didn't do their homework. Maybe they just somebody said you should get this guy, and they did. And I remember there was a company a bunch of years ago, and I'll leave out the names to protect the guilty. But the CFO came. I was waiting in the green room, waiting to go out, and he came into the green room and said, "Listen, I have a favor to ask. Don't talk about layoffs." I said, "Why not?" He goes, "Well, we're planning on having a round in a couple of weeks, and I don't want you to talk about that's bad for business." I said, "But it is bad for business. It's bad for a corporate culture." He goes, "Yeah, I know, but don't talk about it." I said, "Well, I'm not going to not talk about it. I won't bring it up. I'm not going to be spiteful, and I'm not going to stab you with it. But if it comes up, I'm going to talk about it." He goes, No, I know, but I'd really appreciate it if you didn't talk about it." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not going to make that promise." So that has happened a couple of times. But again, I think most people, I've got enough work out there that if they know that I'll always speak my mind. And if they're afraid of that, I did have somebody cancel on me once. There's a big brand who I had a meeting with the senior executives before I went to visit them. And we had a very honest conversation. They uninvited me. So one of the mistakes that people make, and by the way, folks in my position as well make this mistake, the well-intended insiders who want to affect change, they come guns a-blazing. They get the chance to talk to the executive, and it starts off with sometimes the words, but at least the mentality of, "Let me tell you what's wrong," or "Let me tell you how to fix this thing." And nobody wants to hear that. Like, can you imagine if I sat down and said, "Can I just tell you how to make your podcast better? Can I just spend 10 minutes and tell you what's wrong with your podcast?" I mean, I haven't even said anything already. You're shutting down, right? You're like, "No, don't tell us that," right? But if I talk about vision, and I talk about where I want to go, and I talk about the world that I imagine, I think a lot of it is language. And it has to start with curiosity. Can I talk to you about some of the things that you're imagining for this company? What do you envision for this company? And if somebody shows curiosity for the ideas of somebody else, then and only then are they open to your ideas. Only if you show interest and give somebody, if you make somebody else feel seen and heard and understood, then they want to return the favor by making you feel seen and heard and understood. So very often, I don't actually think it's the point of view. I think it's the way in which we present the point of view to those in power. Almost always. I saw it play out recently in front of me. Very senior executive went up to his boss and basically said, "Let me tell you what's broken and what's wrong." And I saw his boss just shut down. As opposed to going up to him and be like, "Hey, how are you? It's been a stressful few weeks. I just want to check in and see that you're okay." So I pride myself on that. I think that was the coup of Start With Why, to be honest. I'm not the first person to talk about purpose at work, but back when I started talking about the why, if you talked about purpose at work, you were some weirdo hippie, And so talking about purpose at work, you're literally only preaching to the converted, this very small group of people who believed in it. And the coup of Start With Why was the language, which is I found a neutral language that made those who needed to hear the message hear the message. It also was new language that those that were struggling to tell their bosses now had new language. And I got that in the early days of Start With Why. The number of people who came up to me and said, "Thank you. You've given me language that is helping me tell them the thing I've been trying to tell them for years." So once again, it goes back to language. So very simply, every single one of us knows what we do. The products we sell, the services we offer, the jobs we perform. Yeah. Some of us know how we do what we do, the things that we think make us stand out or distinguish us from others who do similar things to us. But very, very few of us can clearly articulate why we do what we do. I don't mean to make money. I mean, what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why did you get out of bed this morning? Why does your organization exist? And why should anybody care? And what I learned is that the great leaders, the most inspiring leaders, everybody from Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Steve Jobs, all these great leaders, these inspiring leaders, every single one of them thinks, acts, and communicates the exact same way. And it's the complete opposite to the rest of us. Where we start telling people what we do, they start telling you what they believe. And what they do simply serves as tangible proof of what they believe. And the magical thing about this little idea is it's not my opinion. It's based on the biology of how the human brain makes decisions. So the human brain, the there's a part of the brain called the neocortex, which is our Homo sapien brain. It's the newest part of our brain. It's responsible for all of our rational thoughts and language. It's just not responsible for decisions. This is where the what exists, right? It's very rational, easy to see, tangible. The limbic part of our brain is responsible for all of our feelings, like trust and loyalty. This is where gut decisions come from. It's also responsible for all of our behavior, but it has no capacity for language, which is why it's hard to put feelings into words. This is why we use analogies and metaphors all the time. And so when we start with why, you're actually talking to the decision-making part of the brain. That's why it feels inspiring. This is why you light up or get goosebumps when you hear those kinds of messages, or feel like somebody's talking directly to you, as opposed to describing a product which you can understand, and it's all very rational. And most people lead with the rational. They're trying to make a tangible or a rational case why you should or shouldn't do something, or buy or not buy something. The great leaders inspire us to buy. And again, it's just, sure. So to do it for yourself, to learn your own why, first of all, understand that a why is basically an origin story. It's where you come from. We are the products of our upbringing. You know, the experiences you had growing up make you who you are, make me who I am. Your why is fully formed by your mid to late teens, and it doesn't change for the rest of your life. You have only one why. You are who you are. Now, whether you're living in balance with that is a different conversation. Whether you're making the decisions that are of high authenticity, and that's all that authenticity means. Authenticity means the things that I say and the things that I do reflect who I actually am. That's all it means. That's a different conversation. And so when you know your why, the ability to make those choices becomes a lot easier. You know, we've all had the feeling of flow and things like this, except it's a little bit like a roulette game. Like sometimes it happens and sometimes it doesn't. It's like I've done the same thing 1,000 times. How come it doesn't feel good anymore? So here's a fun way you can learn your why. It's called the friends exercise. Go and do this with a best friend. You know, do not do this with a spouse. Do not do this with a sibling. Do not do this with a parent. It doesn't work. Best friend. Somebody who loves you, who will be there for you. They'll pick up the phone at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you would do the same for them. And ask them this simple question. Why are we friends? And they're going to look at you like you're nuts, because the part of the brain that controls that deep feeling of love and trust doesn't control language. It's a difficult question to answer. And so they'll say, I don't know. Of course they know. They just don't have the words for it. And so you actually stop asking the question why, and you ask the question what. What specifically is it about me? Come on, what specifically is it about me that I know that you would be there for me no matter what? And they'll hem and they'll haw and they'll struggle, and you can't help them and you can't let anybody else help them. You have to let them go through the process. And they'll start describing you. I don't know, you're smart, you're loyal, I trust you, and you play devil's advocate. Good. That's the definition of a friend. You have that with lots of people. What specifically is it about me that I know you would be there for me no matter what? And again, they'll go through a few rounds of complaining and describing you. And eventually they'll quit and they'll start describing themselves. And this is what my friends said to me. They said, I don't know, Simon. All I know is that I can sit in a room with you. I don't even have to talk to you. And I feel inspired. And I got goosebumps. In fact, I'm getting them right now. It happens every time. Because what they did is they put the value that I have in the world into words. And I had the emotional response. And that's what will happen. Somebody will say something that you will either get goosebumps or you'll well up or something will happen. And that's when you know you've hit it. Because the thing that you give to the world, that you should be working to give to the world consistently, is the reason those people love you. It's the reason why you're not friends with everyone. And if you do this with multiple friends, the amazing thing is they will say very similar, if not the exact same thing, because that's the thing you give to the world. That is your why. It is the reason you get out of bed in the morning. It's a really fun exercise. With teams, it's slightly different. But even for companies, a why is still an origin story. You know, where the company came from, the founder's story is the why of the organization. For teams, it's a little different. In those cases, you want to tell specific stories that reflect why we love coming to work every day, right? And by the way, you asked before, like, how do I communicate my why to other people? Just remember, I'm not smarter. I've just been doing this a lot longer, so I'm practiced, which is why I can sort of wax on about a vision or something like that. It's just because it's taken me many iterations to get it right. The easiest way to do it is to simply say to somebody, let me tell you why I love working here. Not like, love. Like is rational. I like my job. I like the people. I get paid well. I like my job. Love is emotional. It's like, the question is like, do you love your wife? Yes, I like her a lot. It's a different standard, right?
Yeah.
Right? Love is a higher standard. So when you talk about what you love, it's profoundly different. I'll give you a silly example, actually one that comes from the book, which I haven't thought about in quite a long time. Trying to communicate your ideas to someone, whether it's selling a product, selling yourself in an interview, or just in a meeting with people, just you want people to quote unquote buy your ideas, right? It's the same as dating. I mean, think about it. You sit across a table from somebody and you hope to make the sale. You hope to make the deal, right? That's what you want. So let's make a dating analogy. Let's take, let's call him Brian, right? And we send Brian out on a date. And he sits down at the table with this girl that he was set up with. And this is how he starts the date. He goes, I'm incredibly rich. I'm very successful. I'm on TV a lot, which is great because I'm quite good looking. I know a lot of famous people, and I have a beautiful house. You should come by sometime. Now the question is, how well did that date go? Instinctively, we all know that was crap, right? But think about how people sell their ideas or how companies sell themselves. It's like, we're a very, very successful company. You may have seen our advertising on TV. We're very good at what we do. We have beautiful offices. You should come by and see them sometime. Well, if we know the date was crap, why would we think that would work any better? The answer is, it doesn't, right? Now let's send Brian back out again. And this time we'll arm him with his why. And we'll say he doesn't know his why, but he can answer specific questions about love, right? He can give specific examples. So he sits down again and he says, I absolutely love my work. Just the other day, just 3 days ago, one of my team members was struggling, and I had the opportunity to I was walking down the hall and I was late for a meeting, but I thought, you know what, this is more important to me. And I sat down with them and helped them figure out a problem. And then I just went to my meeting and showed up late. And when I explained why I was late, everybody said, yeah, of course you did the right thing. And I got to tell you, it is the most magical thing in the world to come to work every day in a place where I get to do that, and it's so appreciated. And the best thing about it was I made a lot of money because of it, and I got to meet a lot of famous people. I get to go on TV all the time, which is really great because I'm good looking, and I got to buy a beautiful house. You should come by sometime. All the same rational stuff is there, but how different did that feel?
Yeah.
Right? And so now the rational stuff is the proof, but it's not the reason to buy. So if you can tell a specific story of what you love, and it's a high bar, you have to love it. It's a way to attract people who love the same thing. And the best thing about it is it's a filter, because there are some people listening to that story and think that's cheesy. We're not going to do well together in business. So it's a fantastic filter that it attracts the right people and it repels the wrong people. So it's the joy of going on the adventure with the family.
Yeah.
Or maybe two people who are more adult than you.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like the Formula One example.
Yes.
Right. So those stories are very, very similar, which wasn't you standing by yourself in the pit lane, right? It was these two people that you're standing with, a race car driver and a multimillionaire team owner, kind of like mom and dad, a charity worker and a teacher who are highly qualified people. But in that moment, you're just a family and you're a part of that family. And you may be the youngest, least qualified person, but you're still a part of the family.
Yeah.
And those two are exactly the same story. That incredible sense of oh my God, this is it. I love this. I'm in the car with them.
Yeah.
This is it. And everybody's relaxed and we're enjoying ourselves. And I'm a part of this. And they see me as equal.
Yeah.
They didn't look down on me. And you said, I feel like I've arrived. You feel like I'm here. But it was also that they treated you that way.
Yeah.
And so your why is very much about feeling a part of the family, feeling a part of the team. And I would venture to say that you're at your happiest when you are working with people in a common cause to do something together, and where you struggle is when you're asked to do things. So I reached a point in my career where I had fallen out of love with my work. Superficially, my life was good. You know, I owned my own business. We had amazing clients. We did amazing work. Consultancy.
Yeah.
In New York, and I didn't want to wake up and do it anymore. I was done.
And was that a sudden realization or a dawning one?
I mean, you know, these things always feel sudden, but they've been, you know, it's a slow boiling frog until you realize the water's boiling. So the answer is, who knows? It showed up, you know? Like, how long does it take to feel depressed? I don't know. Yeah. And I was deeply embarrassed, feeling bad because I shouldn't. Look what I'm doing. Look at the things I'm getting to do. Like, I shouldn't be, you know, depressed or, you know, not want to go to work. And so I kept all those negative feelings to myself, which really is stupid. And the feelings got darker and darker and darker, and they feed on themselves. And that's the problem with keeping negative feelings to yourself. They fester and grow. And it got to the point where I was in really a dark place. But all of my energy went into pretending that I was happier, more in control, and more successful than I really felt. So nobody knew. And it wasn't until a very dear friend of mine came to me and said, there's something wrong. There's something different. I don't know what it is, but something's off. And I, for whatever reason, I opened up and came clean. And it was cathartic. You know, it was a weight lifted off my shoulders. And all of that energy that went into lying, hiding, and faking every day, I now had new energy, renewed energy to actually find a solution. I'll spare you the long, drawn-out story, but I had already articulated this idea of the why and the golden circle to explain why some marketing worked and some marketing didn't. And it was the discovery of the human brain, the limbic brain and the neocortex, which I learned at a dinner party. I was sitting next to somebody who, their dad was a neuroscientist. I mean, it was just like polite conversation, and like bells started going off. And I realized it didn't explain why marketing worked. It explained why people do what they do. And I realized this was my problem. I knew what I did. I knew how I did it, but I couldn't tell you why. That's what I needed to find. And I couldn't do it for myself. And so I brought in an outsider who had objectivity and took me through some sort of version of his process and mine. That really helped. But the more important thing was I figured out how to help my friends find their why. And that's what I started doing. I started helping my friends find their why. Yeah, I mean, you know, human beings are, despite our own self-opinions, we're not that strong and we're not that smart. But in teams and groups, we're amazing. And so trying to solve your own life problems by yourself, I've got some really bad news. You can't. Which is why addiction exists. Because I can't solve these problems myself. I can't overcome the stress myself. So I'm going to drink, you know, or I'm going to do something else that's harmful to myself, my family, and my relationships. As all addictions are. Whether you're addicted to your cell phone, addicted to alcohol, addicted to drugs, you're going to destroy your relationships. You're going to destroy yourself. And there is tremendous value, and it does take courage, you're right, for somebody who loves you to say, I got you, I'm here, let's do this together. Or for you to call a friend and say, I think I'm struggling, and I think I can't do this alone. Can you help me? It's humiliating, but it is perhaps the single greatest lesson that any human being can learn, which is to say, I don't know and I need help. And if you can learn that, and you can do it in the worst of times, you can do it all the time. You can do it with silly things. And for me, I mean, for those who know my work, you know, I regularly call myself an idiot, you know, and I do think of myself as an idiot because I have no problem saying, I don't know, can somebody who's smarter than me explain this to me? I'm under no false illusion that I have to present myself as the smartest person in the room, because I'm not, you know? And where I'm good, I might know a sliver of something, but my goodness, everything else we're talking about, I know nothing. And I think being comfortable with asking for help and saying, I don't know, it turns out we're surrounded by people who want to take care of us and help us, but they don't, because they didn't think we needed it, because we were too busy presenting ourselves as perfect and having all the answers. So they just didn't. But they would if we just asked. And, you know, I have a small group of friends where, you know, we have a deal, and I have a couple of friends that are super senior, super high performing by old traditional definitions. And I remember the first time one of us called the other and said, I'm stuck, which is really difficult to do because you want to look smart and strong to people who you respect, and they're so smart and strong. And I have one of my dearest friends, he's in the military, he's a senior officer in the U.S. Air Force, he's active duty still. And I remember the first time he called me brother, which in the military is a big deal. You and I have colleagues and coworkers, they have brothers and sisters. And so they call each other brother and they call each other sister, and it's an amazing thing. And I remember the first time he said, all right, brother, I'll talk to you later. Or, hey, brother. And I was like, that means the relationship was different now, And he's a warrior. I mean, he's hardcore. He's an amazing human being. And when we get off the phone, he'll say, I love you, Or he'll text me and say, I miss you. Not just miss you, I miss you, which is way more vulnerable, And it's deeply human. And he and I are, we call each other and say, I'm struggling or I'm stuck. And sometimes it's business, I just need your opinion, but sometimes it's personal. Sometimes it's frustration, Can I talk to you? I'm so freaking frustrated. But to foster those relationships, and those relationships take a lot of work to get to. They don't just show up. And they do require risk. At some point you open up a little bit. But to have those kinds of friendships, I think, are absolutely essential to being what we would call a high-performance human being. I don't think you can be a high performance by yourself. I don't think it exists. And anybody who does they're either not as high performing as they think they are, or they are high performing, but at tremendous cost. They're lonely. They need pills to start the day. They have other issues. They'll have health issues later in life. I think if you choose to be quote unquote high performing by yourself, it comes at a cost that I think is not worth it.